Hello and welcome to Writing America, Pages and People. If you're here to learn about an American author and some of their works, then you're in the right place. My name is Rachel Rigolino, and I'm an instructor in the English department at the State University of New York at New Paltz. So come on, we'll watch this video and leave some comments below.
Born in China, Ha Jin came to the United States in 1985 to continue his studies in American literature. He has published several collections of short stories and novels and has taught creative writing at various universities, including Emory and Boston University. Ha Jin had intended to return to China after earning his PhD, but his life was turned upside down by the pro-democracy student protests that broke out in China in 1989. He was studying at Brandeis University when the student uprisings held in Tiananmen Square began. The students were calling for a more democratic form of government, freedom of the press, and freedom of speech. After several weeks, the protests were violently put down by the army and police. Photojournalist Charlie Cole snapped one of the most iconic photographs of the century during the protests, the photo of a single man standing in front of a line of tanks. In this snippet from a longer frontline piece, eyewitnesses discuss the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre and the context of the photograph.
On a June night in 1989, Tiananmen Square was a war zone. The People's Liberation Army fought its way into Beijing from 4 directions, with orders to converge on the square. Unarmed citizens and students faced armored personnel carriers, tanks, and soldiers armed with semi-automatic weapons. By 5:30 a.m. on June the 4th, 1989, the Army's mission had been accomplished.
Gradually, the dawn came up. In Beijing, you know how misty it is, smoggy. This wasn't a sunrise. This was like a grayness gradually acquiring some sort of light. And where all this life had been was this quadrangle of tanks facing out. All the students were gone. And I just stood there and I watched.
T.D. Ullman was staying at this Beijing hotel, which has a commanding view of Shangan Avenue, the Avenue of Eternal Peace, that runs directly into Tiananmen Square. On these balconies, Western reporters and photographers had crouched, often under gunfire, to record the events of the night of June 3rd, 4th. Then, at noon on the 5th, when the army seemed in complete control, something remarkable happened on Shangan Avenue, immediately below.
The tanks danced. It was obscene. It was like an obscene dance. They just didn't roll out. They swiveled around. God knows why they did that. And then the moment came which has intrigued you and fascinated and moved the world. You stand there, you're looking down, this tank's coming out. It's got its gun up. And this man just went out and he said, "Stop."
It's absolutely extraordinary. You could look at him as unusually brave, but he probably wasn't. He was probably just an ordinary person who was so disgusted at what he had seen for the last few days. And he said, "Right, that's it. I'm going out and I'm going to just stand in front of that column."
Ha Jin said that as he watched the protests on television, quote, "Something collapsed inside of me. For a few weeks I was in a trance because I was not prepared for this. I was supposed to be going back. Then suddenly I realized I couldn't. I was in shock for a long time." Now, Ha Jin maintains he would never have become a writer were it not for this trauma and his decision to stay in the States and become an American citizen. What follows is an excerpt with Ha Jin in which he discusses his early life and how he became a writer. As Joyce Carol Oates observes in her preface, Of all the writers included in the Oxford Book of American Short Stories, no one has led a more varied and a more tumultuous life.
I was in a shock. I was in a shock. I had served in the Chinese army, and we were taught to serve the people. The army was from the people, was supposed to protect, to serve the people. But as a result, but now everything was reversed. I couldn't reconcile it, the fact with my own all the years of instructions, and I was in a daze for weeks, just didn't know, couldn't function normally. But later, my son arrived. I realized I should immigrate to live in the United States, let him become an American. I was not sure of my own life at the time, but I was certain that he must be American. I saw the violence and the massacre served no purpose. It's gratuitous. And then I realized there has been so much violence, destruction in Chinese history, done gratuitously, no purpose at all, as if there was a cycle, and a lot of Chinese had been trapped in the cycle. I wanted my son to get out of that. That was another motivation, so that it would be better for him to stay in the United States and live in that place and take this new land as his country. That was my immediate purpose. For me, writing English is a lot of suffering as well. Nabokov once said for him to write in English was a private tragedy. I did not understand this until recently. Gradually, I could feel his tragedy, and I think he was right. There was a lot of pain. There was a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of disappointment, and that's why I never encouraged anyone to write in your second language. You don't have to write in your mother tongue, but you should always write in your first language. It took so much pain and suffering to decide to write English. Once I was on the way, I knew I would never change the course. Life is too short. We can't afford to change back and forth. We just can't do it. I think China has been developing rapidly. It becomes a richer country, sure, and people's living standard has improved. All these are facts, but at the same time, we should not forget that China is still a poor country because the vast majority are not rich. They haven't benefited a lot from the boom, the economic boom. And a lot of things, in fact, were not as good as before even. For instance, basic medical service. The barefoot doctor system was gone, but there's no new one to replace it yet. And also education is a big problem. And also environmental the environment, I think, was a major issue. Water pollution, also the landscape. If you fly in the air, you can see there are few places that have uglier landscape. That's very clear. It really makes it heartbreaking to look at the land. It's abused, overused. So how to restore the land, protect the land, these are more urgent and longer and deeper problem, more serious problems, I think people perhaps haven't make enough effort to really to make China a better place.